Hello there and welcome back. So in this video I am going to introduce you with grids in Figma. So layout grids can help us to align objects within a frame, and they provide a visual structure to our designs. They can help our design remain logical and consistent across different platforms and devices. Layout grids do not rely on a pixel grid, and that means that they are not dependent on a specific resolution or dimension. And an important thing here to note is that you can apply a layout grid to frames only, and this can be of course applied to top level frames or nested frames as well. So for example, let's now create or actually select our home frame here, and let's apply a layout grid. So in the design panel here, we can see one new category called the layout grid. So if I press here plus icon, then a layout grid will be immediately applied to our actual frame. So we can see those actual rectangles within our home frame. And this new grid frame of a 10 pixel has been automatically added to our actual design. So we can click this little icon from here to open up the settings for this grid. So there are actually three different kind of grids. Grids, columns, and the rows as well. So we can use either one of them, or we can combine multiple different types of grids as well. For example, this first grid contains three different options. The first one is the size of a grid. So for example, as you can see, we can specify that number by ourselves. We can increase that number here as well, and we can make those actual grids even smaller or bigger, so it's up to us. So for example, now we can specify here the size of each and every grid here to be 10 dpi or 10 pixels, so as you can see here. Now when I zoom in here, you will see that this actual top bar contains the height of 60, right? And here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 different grids, which means that 6 times 10 is equal to 60. Okay, and with that we can also make sure that we have, for example, a consistent padding for each and every side here of our design. So as you can see, one grid here actually contains 10 pixels, and two grids contain 20 pixels. And now we can just take those two grids, and we can create here our rectangle, or our main part of the screen, where we're going to follow along, not to cross those two grids, right? So by default, as you can see, all our elements here will immediately snap to basically each and every grid. So those grids are snappy, and that can be very useful. Now let's select our actual frame here. I'm going to choose options here. I'm going to now explore some different kind of grids, like rows and columns. Also, you can here modify the actual color basically of those grids. In this case, default color is a red of 10% opacity. Now let's switch to columns. So the columns grid is also quite useful, especially when you're working on some web design. So you can create here, for example, a frame with a size of a simple web page, and then you can divide that actual width or that web page into 12 different columns, and that can be quite useful when you're actually creating some components, right? In this case, as you can see, the columns contain a little bit more options. So we have a type of those columns. We have a center. As you can see, we can put all those columns in the center, on the right or on the left, or we can just stretch them as we increase the size of our actual frame. There you go. Next here we have an option, the width. So the width is only available with some other types, like a center, left, or right. Here we can specify the actual margins. So at the moment we have a 0 margin on each and every side, but we can specify here, for example, 20 pixel margin on both sides. There you go. And the gutter is basically the space between those actual grids, right? So that's how it actually works. And the rows type is quite similar to the columns, so it has the same properties actually. Okay, and we can of course remove all those grids just by clicking this minus button, or we can even hide them, right? So we can hide and show them whenever we want, or we can just remove that. Okay, so and we can also combine grids with the constraints as well. So let me show you. Let me just here, for example, specify some guides to each and every side, for example 20. and here 20 as well. There you go. Let's now actually show those rulers. Okay, so now I'm going to create here one frame. So custom frame. I'm going to snap to those guides actually. There you go. The top margin here can be maybe 20. And down below I'm going to stretch all the way down. Like that. So now within this nested frame, I can also apply those same grids. But before that, let me just here specify also the constraint for this actual nested frame, because now when I try to, let me just here set the fill color of this actual frame so we can make the difference. There you go. And now when I try to increase or decrease the actual size of this screen, then the actual frame will follow along. So now I'm going to also constrain this actual nested frame on the top and on the bottom. And now when I try to increase or decrease the actual size, then our nested frame will follow along and it will scale proportionally quite well. So now within this actual nested frame, I can add the layout grid, right? And here I can specify, for example, let's say maybe a rows. I can specify maybe, for now, maybe let's say 5 rows. There we go. And now within this actual frame, we can also add some elements, like for example, a rectangle, right? And now you will see that the actual rectangle will not constrain to the actual frame parent. It will now constrain to the actual grid or the row that we have specified within our frame. As you can see now, when I place this rectangle right here, then that rectangle will be immediately constrained to that specific row, right? And we can of course now increase its actual width and height. As you can see, it's also snapping to those grids that we have specified. We can also change its color a little bit. There we go. Now we can specify its actual constraint to be a scale on each and every side. And now, as you can see, if I try to actually increase the size of this screen, that's how my actual design will react. So this actual rectangle which is inside will immediately change and scale within this row grid, right? And that's how we can make a perfect design on our canvas, right? And of course the space between each and every row here will be consistent. So as you can see, that space between all those items or all those row grids is not changing, and it has a default value. So as you can see, that gutter is actually 20. We can of course reduce that by ourselves. There you go. And basically that's also how you can combine the actual grid with a constraint as well. So you can apply grids only to the frames, and whenever you add some nested element within the frame, you can also constrain that nested element only within those grid layouts, right? So that's quite an interesting option. And what we can do, we can also just, for example, create some frame, for example, with a size of, let's say maybe 24 by 24. And we can use that actually to create the icon by ourselves. So we can design some icons for our projects as well. So here we can apply maybe a layout grid, where each and every grid will have, for example, a size of a 2. So if we divide 24 by 2, we're going to get 12 different grids. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And for example, from here, we can just create one rectangle. As you can see, this rectangle is snapping to each and every grid from here. And we can now or actually create a new frame inside the frame, like that. And now this new frame can be, for example, constrained within this outer frame. And this outer frame can have a little bit different color, while this inner or nested frame can have this color of white. And now, as you can see with this, we have basically created the layout where we can create our icon, right? So this one grid around the actual frame will act as a padding for our icon, right? And only within this white area, we can now start and design our actual icon. So possibilities are actually endless, and by using those grids we can actually make our life a lot easier, because that way we will be able to create a consistent designs across our project. Alright, so that's all I wanted to share with you about grids in this video, and for now that will be all.